Hi, I am feeling so discouraged by this method. I'm going to pretend like somebody else is leading this tutorial. They're telling me to trust the process because I cannot confidently say that and know that this outcome is going to be fantastic. So, kind of wish I didn't trust the process. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, you guys, and this week we are going to be refinishing this beautiful kids' bedroom set that has been passed down from what I have known as their grandparents. And so this little girl is 3 years old and they're wanting to give her a fresh new set. So I cannot wait to show you guys all of the different really beautiful, intricate designs of these pieces. First, when I look at a set or a piece to determine just pricing, time-wise, I want to look at the finish and how durable it is, because that'll help determine how long it's going to take to remove the entire old finish. I also want to look at the curved surfaces, the intricate detail, because those will require stripping, not sanding. I'm also going to focus on immediate repairs that need to be addressed right away before the finish. So right away there were 2 of these little notches missing. Thankfully my client still had them, so I just had to repair those back on. In addition, there were a couple of splits in the wood. This is not one, I forgot to record it before, but there were a couple of long cracks in the wood. And so I'm going to show you how to glue and clamp those down in the most efficient way. As for the finish, I have a couple of different methods that I like to try. I have 3 different methods. I tried carbide scraping, I tried sanding straight out, and then I tried stripping. And I'm going to tell you which one was the most productive. And of course, we're going to go through all of the different trial and errors that I went through, because this finish, it looked like it was easy to come off. It appeared like it would be really easy to sand through, even scrape off. But that was so wrong, and I had to remind myself too that I needed to keep in consideration that this is the only damage it took with multiple generations of being passed down. Always look for a brand mark in the top drawer as well. It's just a really neat thing to keep in mind. When I initially got them, I looked for a date, any kind of date stamp on the back of them, and all I saw was this 228. So I kind of gave up hope on knowing exactly how old this set is, but I was going to assume 60 years old. It had a lot of really beautiful joint work. These had these little notches on the fronts, which I really loved, and then all of the drawers had dovetails that were really cleanly done. So again, just a fun little thing to keep in mind. If you were to resell a set, this definitely raises the quality of these pieces because it shows that it does have fine craftsmanship involved in it. The hardware was also really beautiful. The client decided to keep them, so I was really stoked about that. So let's go ahead and get these pieces in the garage to start with the first step. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that's removing hardware and cleaning. So I almost gave up looking for how old this bedroom set was. I was just kind of gonna estimate, like maybe it's from the grandmother when she was a child, so the 60s, maybe 70s. And then I found this. Nailed on one of the inside of the bed frame boards, I found this. It's like a receipt for the whole set. And look at that. That's May 14th, 1940. That means that it's probably the great-grandmother's set. And that means that this set is 84 years old. That is so cool. I started on removing hardware, and my immediate go-to is using my power drill, and it gets it all done really quickly. I got this great set from Milwaukee. It's 2 smaller drills, both with their own batteries, and it comes with a bag and a battery charger, and I really prefer it. They're really nice and handy, and they're way smaller and fit in better nooks and crannies. So this is my go-to. So obviously a power drill is going to be so much faster for removing hardware, but I understand that power drill sets can cost a couple of hundreds of dollars, which is not super affordable. So I want to show you a really affordable and super convenient option that you have that gives you a great variety of screwdriver heads. So this is the ratchet screwdriver that I use. It has
12 different head options that I can interchange whenever I need. And all you're gonna do is you are going to push the top piece right here of the one you need, and then you're gonna pull it out from there. Then once you do that, you're gonna push down on this little black thing, and then the other one will just pop right out. And while you hold that down, you pop in your new one, and there, you have a new screwdriver too. It is so convenient, you guys. It is really, really reliable, and it's got the ratchet part so that I can just screw, twist my hand just a little bit, and it still works great. So I'm gonna link this in the description as well as all the other products that I use. And this is gonna be titled under ratchet screwdriver. Again, seriously, great investment, super cheap, really affordable, and it's way, way, way more affordable than getting a whole set, and way more convenient than storing and keeping track of a whole set too. So let's get to the rest of the hardware.
I removed the rest of the hardware using the ratchet screwdriver, and it's not as quick as the drill, but it's definitely still really reliable. And then I got to cleaning. You always want to make sure you remove the hardware first before cleaning, because there can be gunk that builds up underneath the hardware, and you don't want to miss that and then sand it into your wood. So always make sure to give it a nice clean. I like to use Simple Green Cleaner. It's an all-purpose cleaner and it's a degreaser, so I think it's the most productive to use. And I just buy the big tub and then I put it into those smaller spray bottles, which are super cheap. Next, let's address these immediate repairs. There were 2 spots that were missing the pieces, and so what I did is, thankfully I had the pieces, so I applied just a thin layer of glue. The more you do, the more chances you might warp some of the wood just because of the added moisture. So I applied a thin layer of glue, and then I add one of these foam sanding pads to the piece so that it doesn't ruin or scuff the wood itself with the clamp, because there's going to be a lot of pressure applied. So I clamped it really tight, and then I left it for overnight. I always recommend at least 3 hours for the glue to set, but I like to do 8 to 12. As for removing the finish, I do have 3 different techniques that I try out, and the first one I try out definitely requires the most elbow grease, but it's my carbide scraper. It is phenomenally helpful when it works really well. It'll scrape off as much finish as possible, and then you have so much less to sand through. However, in this case, this finish was really hard to get off, and it just required a lot of sweat, a lot of hard work, so it wasn't productive in my opinion, even though it still got clean start. So then, as you can see here, the sanding is a lot quicker.
Okay, I mentioned that I try 3 different methods. I try sanding straight down, carbide scraper, and then sanding, and then I don't prefer stripping. Holy smokes. If I have to continue carbide scraping and sanding, I'm going to lose it. I just sanded most of one nightstand, and I've been here for over 2 hours. One nightstand. These are baby nightstands. 2 hours, one nightstand. So I'm gonna try using stripper, and I'm gonna show you which stripper I prefer. Okay, so I've got 2 different products that I'm gonna be using. This is Clean Strips Premium Stripper. This is the one I've used in the past that I actually really like. I do notice that for most strippers anyways, I think it's gonna be reversed, but I'm gonna add my picture. For most strippers anyways, you have to use large globs or gloops? Globs. Large globs of the stripper, because once it dries, it can't do its job. So I'm going to pour this bad boy on. I'm going to make it very thick, layered, and then I'm going to be scraping it off before it dries too bad. Then I'm going to be using Clean Strips After Wash. This product I am going to pour into a bowl, and I'm going to get a scrubby brush, and I'm going to scrub all of the nastiness off after I've scraped it off for the stripper. This will help it clean better so that when I sand, hopefully it won't goop up my sandpaper. So I'm hoping that this is a better method than sanding and carbide scraper, because for these pieces, yeah, I'm gonna lose my mind. So let's get into that.
As I mentioned before, I'm going to be adding a very thick layer of stripper directly onto the piece. And I'm going to be honest, this was my first attempt with stripper on this set, and honestly my first attempt at really trying to get the method for stripper down. And so I was wildly frustrated. And you might experience the same, where it dries really quickly. It's sticky when you try to scrape it off and it's not super productive. Or even that it's still not completely stripping off the layers. When I went through my first attempt, I was so discouraged because I thought for sure that I just would never get it down. And I found a lot of really helpful techniques and tricks that really solved a lot of those issues for me. Here I was using the afterwash to scrape it off, and honestly, another one. This technique, the afterwash, in my opinion, was not the most productive. It wasn't the cleanest, and it still left a sticky residue that was really difficult to sand off. So in the moment, I was so frustrated because it wasn't being productive. But again, I found the solutions, and I found a technique that really, really worked.
I am feeling so discouraged by this method. It's just the wood's not looking as light as I feel like it should be after stripping it, washing it, and it drying. But if I was watching a tutorial of somebody else, this is the part where the artist says, trust the process. I don't I don't think that right now, but I'm gonna pretend like somebody else is leading this tutorial. They're telling me to trust the process, because I cannot confidently say that and know that this outcome is gonna be fantastic. So we're gonna wait. I'm gonna wait a couple hours, see if it'll dry more, see if it'll be bare wood, but maybe I still have to put some elbow grease into sanding, which I'm hoping it'll. So we'll see. Kind of wish I didn't trust the process, but I'm gonna sand them down, see how easy it is to sand a bare wood, and hopefully it is significantly easier than if I had scraped or if I had sanded all the way. You guys, look at that bug. It is so big. The thing is so big. I don't know what that is, but I want no part of it. Zoomed out this far, and you can see the bug. That's crazy. That's right.
I'm not a bug kind of person, and I thought this was a sign from God that I should just throw in the towel for this whole project, because that thing was massive and it invaded my personal space. But then I went to sand off the pieces.
I'm gonna give my feedback right now because I did the easiest piece first. 10 out of 10. I am so happy with how clean that looks. My only thing is I need to figure out what I did to get such a great result, because I really do fear that these are not going to be as smooth, as bare, as pretty. So I need to figure out what I did differently on this one compared to these. So there's going to be some experimenting.
After sanding down a couple of the drawers that were a little more stubborn and seemed to have more of the stickiness on it, I decided to research a couple of techniques to try tomorrow, including the saran wrap technique.
I am finished for the night, and I have this nightstand completely sanded down, and she's looking pretty. She looks good. I don't have to worry about the ghost hardware because I am using the same hardware, so that's a relief. And then I've got this drawer standed down, this drawer stripped down, this drawer stripped down, and then I've got half of this nightstand done, so feeling pretty good for the day. I do just want to definitely figure out what I did right for the first piece for stripping, because the other ones still sanded really well, but they weren't as quick and efficient as the first one. So hopefully I have some progress tomorrow. So yay!
The next day, I was in problem-solving mode. I wanted to figure out how to get the stripping technique down. Again, I started noticing that when the stripper dries, then it's really sticky and it's not at all easy to scrape off. So I tried the technique where I keep stripper on it and I just kind of move it around over and over again and see if that at least keeps it wet long enough so that it can work. As you can see here, it's still dry, it's still goopy, it's still sticky. So that was pretty disappointing again, but I still wanted to find the solution. I will say that when sanding for all of these curved edges, it was really nice having a foam pad to sand with. And you can get foam pads for orbital sanders. I have mine for my 3x4 sander from Surf Prep Sanding. And I think it is really great because it doesn't lose the curve of the wood, that beautiful rounded edge. And I just really think that it keeps the character of the details. Here's a great example of one that I love for my orbital sander, super cheap for 2 pads, and again, it really helps keep the curve and not sand it flat and make it more of a squared shape. I love it. Before we move on to the stripping technique that I really found that works, I want to show you how I address these cracks after getting the sides completely sanded through. As you could see, that wood split and it had a pretty gnarly crack in it. So what I did is I applied glue all over the surface of the crack and then I rubbed it in with my finger. Ideally, you would use a syringe for it, but I don't have one handy yet. And so I just used my finger to get it into the groove and so that I could see it like kind of bubble out. I then used some larger clamps and I clamped it at the highest point first. I tightened that as much as I could and then I clamped it lower down and cleaned off the excess glue. If when you clamp it really tight you see some glue bubble up, that's a great sign. That means that you got glue inside and now the excess is coming out. Here's a little technique that I found when you don't have a clamp large enough. You intertwine 2 like this and then you clamp them both tight, and it worked really well for this piece. So I also did it to a large crack on the top of the long boy dresser. You can see the crack there. I did the same exact technique and let those both sit overnight. After it was sitting overnight, I removed my clamps and all I had to do for this specific crack was I just sanded it straight. I wasn't super worried about color matching because I was paint washing the entire piece, but I just sanded off any excess glue and it came out really great and that crack was gone. It was solid and it will hold up for so long.
So I have both dressers, both nightstands, and all of the drawers completely sanded down with the exception of this one side of the long boy dresser. And the update on the stripping situation, I want to say I have found that it's working better. I haven't found the perfect solution where it strips all the way down and it's beautiful and amazing and easy, but I have noticed that when I apply the stripper on very, very thickly, then I cover it immediately with saran wrap without messing with it with my fingers or rubbing it around or pushing it at all. And then I leave that on for at least 30 minutes. I've noticed that it strips it down so much better. In addition, another thing that has helped so well is rather than doing the after wash cleaning method, I've been doing Dawn dish soap and warm water using this quadruple zero grade steel wool. and it has helped so much. It gets it way cleaner. It gets it so smooth and ready to go. Rather than the afterwash, I still had a residue. I felt like it just kind of kicked the residue around. So this is definitely my new go-to method for cleaning the stripper off.
Now for my visual learners, I'm going to explain it through while I show you what I did. So again, I applied a very thick coat of the stripper on, and I rubbed that on, and I made sure that it covered every inch of it with a thick layer so that it would stay moist for so much longer. I then applied a saran wrap, and this is your typical cooking saran wrap that you do, but I applied it immediately so that it wouldn't dry, and I made sure that it was wrapped nice and tight. I also made sure to leave it for at least half an hour to 45 minutes so that it wouldn't be too quickly pulled off and it also wouldn't dry too long. For the next part, I wanted to make sure that I found out a way to keep it the most moist, and I actually found that if I pulled off the saran wrap and it was still nice and wet, that was perfect. I could then clean it right away. If not, you can always apply an extra quick coat of stripper and it'll really lift it up and make it so easy to clean right then and there. Again, what I used Dawn dish soap and my steel wool, and this worked wonders compared to the afterwash. I did prefer warm water versus cold water, and once I wiped it off, I already could see a difference of the wood being stripped down to its bare wood rather than still having that sticky residue that after I used the afterwash, I would still notice. So, oh my goodness, you guys, I prefer this method so much. Watching how much it was so close to the bare wood and how I only had to sand off just a little bit of leftover residue, I was so thrilled, and honestly, it was such a blessing to muscle through and still learn this technique, because I think I would have just given up on the first go and just decided that it wasn't best for me. And it was a life-saving technique, so I'm really happy that I figured out the stripping. I then did the exact same technique for hardware, and I know I should have been wearing gloves. Trust me, my fingertips were burning. I learned. So please learn from my stupidity. Wear gloves and read the recommended PPE for each product. I did go over the stripping techniques way more in depth in my next video for the mirror and the headboard and footboard, so definitely subscribe to see that as well. Next, we're going to move on to paint washing. I personally prefer paint washing over staining because I think it's easier to work with and it's such a large variety of colors. I chose this really lightish tan look because my client was wanting to go lighter. So I did a light tan paint and Bear's normal paint and primer, and I stirred it really well, and then I added a cup of water to my little bowl here. And then I added about 1/4 cup of paint. My ratio that I like to stick with is 1 part paint and 4 parts water, because I realize that that gets the best consistency, for my opinion, to be able to wipe it off where it doesn't soak in and cause streaks, but it's also not too runny with water where it isn't productive at all. I did also notice that a satin finish for the paint is just better overall for me when doing a paint wash, and I only had to use a quart for the whole project. So then I applied on the paint wash generously but also quickly. This part's important because you don't want the paint to dry in streaks. You just want it to stay wet and soak in to capture in those natural tones of the wood and give you the color that you are choosing. So once I applied it, I let it dry for under 2 minutes, and then I wiped it off in nice long strokes using a paper towel, and it came off really cleanly. Here it is again where I just apply it on really quickly. I don't let it dry for very long at all. Once it's applied over the whole surface, then I wipe it off. I have noticed that when I'm doing larger surfaces like the tops of dressers, I need to move quickly. I even had a friend do half of the dresser while I did the other half really fast to avoid any streaks if possible. Another reason why I really like paint washing is because if it doesn't look quite as blended as I'm wanting it, then I can always apply another coat over it and wipe it off, and it'll blend way better. I feel like it's easier to work with than stained. Here's the paint wash completely applied, and I think it is beautiful. Again, the reason for a paint wash that I prefer too is to really hold in the natural tones of the wood so that I can choose and manipulate whatever color I would like the wood to be. And my client wanted a light wood, so because this wood has a natural orangish red tone, we didn't want that, so this tan paint is going to seal in that color and give us the color that we wanted. I'm going to show you one more time how I apply it, and this is with a larger surface, so you can see how I'm kind of hustling to get it all on, because again, my goal time is under 2 minutes of it fully applied so that it doesn't dry with streaks. Here is where I then use the same technique on the hardware, because again, she was wanting to use the same hardware. So after stripping it, I did the paint wash. I just had my tub of paint wash, dipped the hardware in that were on a screw, as you can see, and then I wiped it off after letting it dry for a little bit, and it still applied really smoothly. So I was super happy with how that turned out.
So all of the pieces are completely paint washed except for the headboard and the footboard. Those are the only two pieces that I still have to work on today. But the rest of it is going to be paint washed. Nope, top coated. If you can tell, I'm running on 5 hours of sleep right now, and after a 13-hour day yesterday. So I'm exhausted, but I just can't wait. I am so close to the finish line, and it's all turning out so beautiful. Like, I don't know if you can see it. Okay, there's the nightstands. They're so cute. And the hardware is the original hardware. I've already stripped that. Obviously, you've seen that. So I'm really excited to see it all come together. Now I need to figure out how to assemble a spray tent by myself on like 5 hours of sleep. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
While I assemble the tent, I want to tell you guys a quick story. My family always does dinner table questions, and somebody will just say, oh, I have a question. And it could be from any kind of question, like, what place do you hate? What's your favorite restaurant? Favorite food all time? Favorite childhood memory? And my husband, when he first came into the family, he had to come up with his first question, and his was, what's your favorite cheese? And still to this day, we all make fun of him of it, but it's a great question. And it was actually a pretty controversial one. So I'm really curious what you think the ultimate cheese is that's just above every other cheese, because mine is strongly mozzarella. That's my hard answer.
That was not as tedious as I thought it would be. That only took me 17 minutes on my first try, so I'm really stoked about that, and I'm excited to see how much space it'll give me while spraying. It's also super cool that there's a door on it. I don't know why I haven't done spray tents in the past, because this is so much nicer than my little getup in the garage. So I'm excited. Yay! Also, shout out to my best friend, because that's what she bought me for Christmas. What a phenomenal Christmas gift. I know it's taken me 8 months. No, my birthday! Oh, that was a month and a half ago. Thanks, Tiffany. That rocks.
You guys, we are in the home stretch. This is pretty much the last big step. It's applying the top coat. I use polyurethane by Behr in the satin finish, and that's my go-to because I think it gets the prettiest finish. I think it's consistent through the sprayer. And so what I do is I apply it using my sprayer. I do the first 2 coats without sanding in between, because I don't want the first coat to be too thin where I accidentally sand off any finish. So I do the first 2 coats, and then I take a nice foam pad and I lightly sand between the 3rd coat to get it really smooth so that the finish is the smoothest it can be. I've talked about this sanding block kit before. It's super great, and it has this Velcro where I can stick any sanding pads to it, and so I really prefer it for even lightly sanding. I stick a foam pad on it, lightly sand, and then I wipe it all off with a microfiber rag. Then when applying my final coat, it feels so relieving to see it all really come together. So I apply my final coat on a nice smooth layer, and then here comes my favorite trick that I love to use. It sounds so ridiculous, but the way that I get the smoothest finish is I actually fold a piece of printer paper and I rub it onto the surface after the last coat of top coat has completely dried. My husband tries to explain it like a sheet of printer paper is like 6,000 grit, and so it's really getting it really smooth. It sounds silly, but it works wonders. Like before I use the printer paper, it's a little bit rough to the touch, and then I rub it down with printer paper and it is phenomenal. I can't fully wrap my head around it, but I swear by it and I use it every single time. I even feel like a goof, but I brought some printer paper to a client's house because I forgot this tip, and so I did it really quick after I delivered it, and it worked wonders. We are in the final stretch. I reapplied the hardware using my drills, and I also used the ratchet screwdriver, but this is where everything really comes together, and it is the most fun part. I actually hate it. I dread it, but you start to see everything come together, and I really enjoy that piece of it. So here's your last look of what it used to look like, with that really strong orange look, with that really worn out orange finish. I am so just speechless that this is what it used to look like, because here it is now. It is completely renewed. It is so much lighter, and these light tones really match this set. I'm so in love with how well the paint wash took and how it really emphasized the wood grain still, but kept the lighter tones that my client was wanting. The hardware was such a beautiful touch as well, and it really sealed it all in. And I am just so in love with this set. That's why it's definitely my favorite set that I've done to date. I say that every time, but this one is evident why. I also added some pretty little drawer liners for the little girl that's getting this bedroom set, and I think that really tied it in. Here's a reminder of how the finish on the tops used to look. They were really worn down, and they had a lot of ring marks and water damage, and so to be able to say that this isn't at all what they look like now, I'm so happy with it. I even sent my client a picture of the before just as a reminder, and she responded with, "Wow, I forgot how messed up they were." And so it's really relieving to get to see these live a whole new life now. When I delivered it to my client, I mentioned that I found the original date on these from 1940, and he was so excited because he was mentioning that these were actually his grandparents' siblings' bedroom set, and he said it was the first one they had ever bought for themselves. So this is now on generation number 5 that it gets to live with in this family, and it is so exciting that I get to be able to say that I helped reset this piece's life, and now this little girl gets to have a brand new bedroom set. And that is all for today, you guys. You guys stuck around for my longest videos so far, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. So if you learned anything from this video, definitely subscribe to my channel for so many more amazing projects coming up, because I cannot wait to show you what I learned and what we can learn together. So thanks so much. I'll see you next time.